How was the rest of your morning slash early afternoon so far?
It was good. I shot. Am I clipping a little bit too? Does it sound a little clippy on
No, it
my end?
sounds good on my end. I just turned the volume up a
Cool.
little bit on my speaker on my
Nice. Okay.
headphones. So yeah, no, it sounds good. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, everything else was good. I was working a bit, just trying to get some video content for the pack, and even last night was just finalizing the Mellotron folder of samples specifically. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's fun to just get that finalized. And I was playing back through it. I'm like, this is a great collection of sounds. So it's exciting.
It's a great place to start, man. So first of all, is this your first sample pack or have you done some of these before?
I guess the first one that I would have that I would release, I've kind of done it for myself in a way. I feel like I'm always kind of looking for something that I could potentially use and actually work into my own production. So I often, probably monthly, try to take some time to see if I can find some new sources of things and build it out
Yeah.
into something that I can then turn into music.
That's sweet. And I mean, you know what? Yesterday, I was so glad that we didn't dive too far into it because I wanted to also talk a little bit about what you mentioned with this. I
Are
think it
we
was a.
started too?
Oh,
Are we officially?
we're freaking in there, man. We
We're in
are
it. Okay, just
rolling.
confirming.
This is a new thing that I actually started doing, which is
Okay.
yeah, hitting the record before letting the person in, just to keep it even more casual and just kind of rolling with it. Yeah, so we are
Awesome.
rolling, bro. And so you mentioned this 90-day like music challenge thing that was so inspiring to me. I want to like know about how that's going and like what gave you the idea to kind of start that. And I think it was 90, right? Was it 90 days?
Yeah, yeah, no,
Okay.
and this is great because it kind of puts me a little bit publicly on blast because I have to sort of then do it. You know, sometimes
Got to
setting a
follow
public
through.
deadline is
Yeah.
a way to encourage work and productivity. But yeah, I think I started to get frustrated with the fact that I felt like I was regularly making stuff, but maybe not fully finalizing it because of like different notions of what it means for something to be out. You
Okay.
know, there's a really interesting. I think Sting is credited with saying that he never finishes a song, but just decides to like stop working on it. And
Ah,
I
love
felt
that.
like, yeah, and I feel like that's a really important way to look at music. You know, when we put something out on Spotify or these DSPs, it feels like it's finalized and it's kind of like going to be like that forever.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like I had a lot of things that still have room to grow and maybe mold with an artist and potentially change. So I wondered if there's maybe a different route to approach with just me being a producer, an artist, and kind of like creator. Could I instead commit to just like finishing and finalizing a bunch of different things almost every day
Mm-hmm.
to see about the mechanism of really just being a little bit more prolific rather than taking some time on trying to perfect everything. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think having those deadlines just forces you to do more. So far, I'm like 7 days into it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm basically just kind of got a YouTube channel where I'm putting these out
Hmm.
and trying to showcase them as an opportunity for maybe different artists or producers to kind of come in and either license them or to take them, work on them, hit me up for collaborations.
Mm. Yeah.
But I think it's a way to clear the hard drive. You know, it's like I'm sure maybe you run into this too. There's probably so many ideas that come to you during writing sessions or jam sessions, but you're like,
Mm-hmm.
where does this go from here?
Mm-hmm.
And finding an outlet can be tough.
1000%. I could not agree more. And I also think that it resonates even further, which is that, like, we talked about education a little bit. And, like, in addition to different musical ideas, there seems to be, for me, always just ambitious, creative, entrepreneurial, like all these different things that I kind of sometimes, if I'm not careful, kind of like dive into, even though now may not be the right time to do so. And so to
Mm-hmm.
that point, I had to kind of catch myself and realize that like music, like creating, and we're going to talk about like sound design and all these different elements of music because it was pretty cool, like getting a little bit of that high level that I got from you yesterday. But like creating music from scratch, not even designing sounds because that's not a space that I'm that interested in, for lack of a better word. But like exploring creative presets and then creating my own melody or my own rhythm with it, and like beat making, for lack of a better word, like getting that 4 bar 8 bar loop sounding really really good. That's like my home base. That's my space that I really love. And what I found kind of interesting is like in the midst of my tutoring business and having a YouTube channel and content creating and all these other things, sometimes I would go several days or several weeks without even like making some new music, which is like the heart of what I actually love to do. So the fact that you're kind of bringing this up is very apropos, because what I started doing recently, and I'll kind of explain it at like a high level, but it's been bringing me creative joy. And what I was doing, I have this new iPad Pro that I just got recently, and I have the keyboard with it. It's kind of awkward the way I'm holding it, but yeah, the 13-inch iPad Pro. I missed having one of these. I sold my 2018 version. This is like was the first device that I got to like, get into mobile music and get into content and all that stuff. But I sold mine a couple of years ago because I was just rocking with the mini that I was using, and I didn't find nearly as much inspiration having that smaller screen when I was used to the bigger one. So I felt like something was missing for a while. Long story short, I ended up getting this. I'm doing like a 90-day, again, apropos, 90-day sort of trial to see if this by itself is a better creative and productive thing for me to have than what's behind me over there, which is a MacBook Pro and iPad mini, having two separate devices. Certainly that's more versatile having, the two devices. But for me so far, like I'm just really, really, really enjoying and being inspired by just having this one. But I say all that to say, the other day I was listening to one of my songs in audio share, and I was like, oh man, I really like this. And I think I was testing to see if the new what do you call function keys on the new keyboard here, if the play button would play or pause what was playing in audio share. So I hit play, and it didn't pause it. What it actually did was played a YouTube video that I didn't even know I was watching from before. And so what happened, it was so amazing. I'm getting somewhere with the story, trust me. What happened was, which was so amazing, was that while my song was playing, there was a clip from either SNL Digital Short or one of these like funny clips that I've enjoyed watching. It started instantly playing the voice, or the voice conversational piece from that, and having that play with my music was like, oh, this is interesting, right? And then I realized I can like press play and pause to the beat to kind of get the talking going, like on beat and stuff. And for me, it just brought a smile to my face. It was like a happy accident. So that kind of resulted in me doing a few of those where it's just a screen share, like a quick rudimentary screen share of the song playing, and then I swipe over to the actual YouTube video because people are hearing the conversation, like what is that, what's happening there. Then it goes to the actual video that's playing, and it's just been a lot of fun. And then I go into like Procreate and just like do like a artistic, air quote, thumbnail of just the first thing that comes to mind from this video. Like, for example, one of the videos was a funny clip, a funny skit about how this guy, whenever he holds the baby starts crying, and he's like taking offense to it because he's like, oh, the baby probably doesn't like me because the baby knows I'm a piece of S. Like, it just kind of says it matter of fact, and it's like this whole like snowball effect or whatever. So the long and short is sometimes you find creativity in like places like that, and for me, this is allowing me to like get back into having a reason to create music, and it's been so dope, man. It's been really, really fun so far.
It sounds like you tapped into like a really cool sort of unique consequence to like the multimedia approach you take to like you as a creator. Just because you're using an iPad where you're bopping between visual, sonic, and other kind of design softwares and apps, like something like that is bound to happen. And that's the happy accidents that make you like want to keep making music. I'm sure when you found that you're like, this could be a whole thing, like, taking different sort of paced dialogue to my beats, obviously has been done in different ways, but when you kind of select and curate the choices and find those magic moments, it's the same feeling you got when you were a kid and you play an electric guitar for the first time, or you hit a nice sounding consonant piano chord. It's like, it's so exciting and energizing.
Right. It's like, this works. All right, so I want to talk to you a little bit about, first and foremost, like, who were you as a kid? What was young Tommy Champion like growing up?
Yeah, I'm the youngest of three boys, so I have a brother who's 4 years older and another brother who's 6 years older. And my mom was very musical. She did a lot of kind of off-Broadway shows and some jazz singing in her career. And so that was a really cool thing to be kind of brought up around. And I had a dad who was very into like 70s classic rock and then 80s sort of synthwave.
Nice.
And then brothers who liked early 2000s stuff. So all that kind of was a great backdrop to, I guess, my musical upbringing. But at a very young age, I was being shown great artists. You know, I remember seeing Zeppelin when I was 6 live in '77 on DVD, and like that was a very important moment because that's why I want to learn guitar. You know, seeing that for the first time. So I think at a very young age, I was into music. You know, I knew that that was something that interested me a lot more than, I guess, traditional stuff. Like I would try to play basketball or baseball or whatever with my friends, and just ultimately we kind of like, this kind of sucks, you know, or I'm good, you know, like I just never connected for me. And the irony is I'm actually like super lanky and tall. I'm 6'9", so like,
oh, get out.
Like, you should be a yeah, it's hard to tell with the Zoom, but so no. Everyone's like, you should have been a basketball player or whatever, but you put me on the court, you quickly change your opinion of that. So yeah, I just
right.
I got super into music at a young age, I would say, and started guitar at like about 6 years old, and learned really quickly that you could teach yourself stuff like with tabs and like kind of early days of like internet tutorials. And I had a guitar teacher I started off with around that age, and then switched to another guy that kind of took me all through high school. But yeah, that was like, I would say a pretty big focus for me, was just initially just getting super into music and trying to learn as much as I could.
That's really cool, man. You know, I just thought of something today. I was looking to like sell some equipment that I have in the studio that I don't know, I haven't used in a while, and I don't know if I'll ever use it again. And if I do want to use that equipment, like I have access to be able to get them through this partnership that I have with this company Zounds, an online seller of music products. So I was like looking to kind of declutter a little bit and stuff, but a thought just kind of popped in my head with regards to like, and I don't know, like I want to kind of talk about it for a second. Yeah, clearly. Henceforth me bringing it up. But like if there was like some type of a way for me to have, I don't know, one day a week and one specific time a week, where the way I was thinking of it is some type of spin wheel, you know what I'm saying? Where it's like I have these 12 pieces of gear that just aren't in circulation now. Many, if not all of them, are ones that, sure, I would have fun if I use them, but I have to really kind of force myself to, just because there's so much stuff. And like something like that could be kind of interesting. Like it's like, hey, today, you know, for I don't know, for a YouTube series or something like that, today I'm going to go ahead and spin it on video, and then this is what I'm making, something starting with this piece of gear, whether it's a MIDI device, whether it's a synthesizer, whether it's a polyamp play or whatever. What are your thoughts on something like that?
No, I think I'm constantly trying to find ways to like reinvent like excitement and like learning with equipment, because I've bought and sold so many of the same pieces of equipment, and really it wasn't a matter of it not being a great piece of kit. It was a matter of like my ability to receive what it could do at that time in my career, and like maybe my bandwidth to learning something new. Like a great example is the SP404 Mark II. So like I got that pretty much as soon as it dropped. But when I got it, it was like 2 years ago. It was like a pretty tumultuous point just in my personal life, so I wasn't really super locked into like YouTube tutorials or really spending the time that required. And additionally, a lot of the things that it has now, because the updates weren't there initially, so it was, the barrier to entry was higher. And then a few weeks ago, I saw somebody using it in a way that I would like to use a drum machine, and it just really kind of changed my thoughts about it. I did some more research, I got it, and it's been one of the best seasons I've ever had with this piece of gear where I'm cranking out all kinds of ideas on it.
Wow.
So yeah, I always feel like I'm trying to figure out ways to re-inspire something, because I love buying equipment, and maybe it's not the actual buying of it, but I think that what I like is the learning process, and then the direct like stuff that comes out of it, because very often through, like as you're saying, like forced exploration, like if you were to, for instance, like I did this the other day even with like a Sun Wu YouTube tutorial about something with the TX-6, be like, hey, I've never used a compressor on there before, like let me go in there and check that out. And as far as making like a spin wheel, you could do that physically, but you could also, I think, probably in something like Notion or even probably some other kind of like AI software, create something that could do that for you. What I would do is collect fragments of like ideas I see in videos like from YouTube of like, oh damn, like a great example is like OP-1 Field recording in reverse is something that very few people do, but I saw this one guy do it really well, and it's hard because you have to have one hand down, so it's like that kind of takes out the ability to do guitar or like any like acoustic instruments like that.
Right.
But when I've done it super intentionally a bunch, it's actually made some of my coolest, little melodies or things that kind of my samples really from that. So that's sort of how I've tried to approach it, but I always feel like I'm like criticizing that and figuring out ways to like make that more straightforward.
Man, that's really cool. Few things to unpack. First off, the SP404. So I've never used an SP SP device before, but I have the 404 Mark II upstairs in a box, unopened. It just came in yesterday. And one of the things that I'm super excited about, well, first of all, just hearing you talk about how it's brought you creative inspiration is like really exciting. First off, so like thanks for sharing that. And then also like there were two things in the latest update that kind of got my attention. One of them was the integration with Koala Sampler, which I absolutely love. I'm a massive fan of Koala, and I'm curious about how these two. Yeah, how they integrate and whether or not having a separate device to control versus just the screen itself is more fun for me, right? It's more like inspiring. So I'll figure that out. And then the second piece is the looper that came in the latest update as well. So have you checked either of those out yet?
Yeah, that was a compelling. I think that was actually what sold me. Ironically, I haven't used a looper as much, but what that did to me was trigger like my guitar player kid nostalgia, which was like the first. I think a lot of guitar players are like, at least like the 21st century ones, are introduced into production through a looper pedal, like inadvertently, because that's the first time in which they've overdubbed themselves on top of themselves.
Yeah.
And so I didn't realize this, but like at a young age, I was super into a lot of different instruments, and no one had ever put the name on it, like you should be a producer. I think my band teacher did, and my mom, but the concept was like pretty elusive, like in the early 2000s. Like it wasn't something that I understood, or it sounded like a business person or something. I didn't know that it was like as much of a creative or artistic kind of a thing.
Wow.
But so the looper I think on there is wild because like the guitar sim, the amp sims on there are nuts. The effects pedals are crazy. And because I love having things like an OP-1 or maybe even just, some of my other synths or whatever, the concept of just like plugging those in, layering them up, and creating this dense thing that then you put on the pads and then reprocess, chop up, flip, reverse. All of that like mechanical effort that goes into it is rewarding in a weird way because it's like you do feel like you're physically bouncing things down versus just Control B or Command B in the DAW. And it goes back to the 90s and 2000 records that really use samplers heavy. You can just hear how those drums or how these different melodic and harmonic parts sounded different by way of the fact that it was just print upon print and then resample until something was different. And I never do that in a DAW. Like I have the ability to do it, but for whatever reason the layout and the way it's streamlined is like you always kind of keep things in a buffer. You don't commit.
Right.
So this makes you commit, and then whether you like it or not, you've got a result at the end of it, which is cool.
Right. That's kind of like the OP-1's claim to fame, and also thing that the select few are kind of like, wait a sec, I want to be able to undo, or I want to be able to that type of thing. I'm super curious, or not curious more so. I just make a point about the DAW statement that you made, like using your keyboard like this to like do musical stuff. Like when I first, I guess, got back into making music several years ago, I started, again on the iPad and stuff, doing like mobile music stuff. But I was like maybe 15 some odd years ago or something. I think I was introduced to Ableton, used it a little bit, but never really fully understood it or whatever. Fast forward 15 years later, I started using Ableton again because I had, through a partnership, I got access to that the MacBook Pro that I referenced earlier. So now I have this like super, powered up and super quality laptop where I'm like, all right, I have that, and I have this, lower end iPad. Let me see if now's the time to transition into making music on my laptop, right? As well as video editing on my laptop versus doing it on touchscreen iPad, which I've been doing for like 4 years prior to that. And I'm in a space right now where I was like learning Ableton. I was having some level of fun with it, learning and things like that. But it was never like nearly as fun as using my OPZ or using Chord Gadget on the iPad or Koala Sampler or like my Roland Phantom or something like that. Like one of these premier ways for me to make music. And I kind of learned over, I don't know, the course of several years now. It's like a ongoing process, but I think I think the pinpoint sort of thing that I kind of realize is that, we all watch a lot of YouTube videos. We make YouTube videos, we watch them, we consume them, et cetera, et cetera. But I kind of learned that it's very important to understand that what you're being told or shared, knowledge you're being shared, what's being shared with you from a particular creator, like that may be his or her way of doing things. And we have to, I guess, be somewhat careful in understanding that, like, we can't be too impressionistic. Like, for example, I'll give you one example. Chord Gadget is not a sexy, popular, not that popular, I think. I mean, it has, I don't know, several thousand reviews and stuff, but people don't talk about it that much. Like, I don't see a lot of like Chord Gadget, conversations about it and things like that compared to, say, Logic Pro on the iPad. Same with, I guess, LumaFusion. People who do video editing on iPad certainly know about that space. But okay, Final Cut just came out on the iPad, and DaVinci Resolve, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, it was a matter of just realizing that what's bringing you creative inspiration, like, you shouldn't, sometimes it's good to try other things, of course, because maybe something could inspire you more, but like, don't force the issue. I think I was forcing the issue a little bit, saying, oh, I need to learn Ableton because it's critical, because that's a industry standard and XYZ. Maybe I'll get back to it, but for now, I'm making dope stuff in Chord Gadget, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're at a spot sort of in the history of music production where there is no more high or lo-fi in terms of, or like, I guess, proper or right way to do things. I think all these different routes can give you a hit song if that's what you're looking for. Or it can make a piece of music that moves you, or it's something that maybe just is just for a select shared few group of people. Like, however you really want to get there, you can get there now, I think. And you see people like Steve Lacy, who did, hit record on an iPhone.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good reminder that all these toys are necessary, but they create different results. And so I think when I was younger, I used to be looking for like, is there a right way to do this? Or like, I kind of initially didn't like VSTs as much, and like would sort of be like, no, I don't want to use those. I'm only going to use like analog or real stuff. And then the more you start to use that, you're like, well, analog really only is for specific types of synths. And then wait a minute, I've had a real Juno and then the Tal Uno plugin that's $50. Can I tell a difference in the mix? No. At the end of the day, like, was one easier than the other? Yeah. Did one maybe inspire me in a different way? Yeah. So that's, and then as time went on, I was able to sort of break down those incorrect sort of assumptions and realize that like everything's valid, and it's just about how that personally inspires what you're doing. And so the price tag on something is more like whether or not it's going to give you creative results and that you enjoy. And ultimately, we're doing this, as you said in the beginning, because it's fun. Like, no one picks a music career or whatever because they're like, this is how I'm going to really make money and provide financial stability. You do it because it's the thing that puts the spine tingling chill down your back.
Right.
And so if you can live that in some kind of every day in some sort of way, or hope to, like, that's way more valuable. So, and then 100%. If I can find pieces of gear that bring you to that, that's what it's about.
There
that's
you
why
go.
I like stuff.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about your studio a little bit. You sent me some pictures of it. It looks so dope. And talk to me about, like, what is it? How long you been there, and like what is it like having being immersed in that space?
100%. Yeah. So I'm the co-founder and the general manager of the studio at Carriage House in New York City, in Manhattan. So it's a new thing that we're starting off. This is a building that's been here basically since the 19th century. It was initially like a carriage barn where they stored horses, like for carriages in the 19th century, and then it was converted into this like different, really kind of almost Spanish-styled, multi-floor housing space, basically. And the current owner and I met basically back in January, and he'd already been doing some musical things here because there's sometimes events, there's Airbnbs, there's certain things that go on here. But we connected, and he'd already been kind of maybe considering the possibility of adding a musical recording side to this place. And that's obviously what I do. I lived in Nashville for 4 or 5 years before that.
Wow.
Where I had like a home studio and had all this gear and was working with a lot of different clients down there.
Wow.
And I'd moved back to New York basically last summer, and couldn't fit obviously everything for my studio in a Brooklyn apartment. But when I met, I was like, hey, I see the potential for this space, and what we could do differently than every other studio in Manhattan is really prioritize like living space, because I think you can go into so many great studios in New York where there's $250,000 signal chain with like the best preamps and the best compressors and things that in certain musical contexts are really, really valuable. But what I've seen, especially, you talk about this on a daily basis, is that the technology we have now is so good that you don't really always need those things. And that, in fact, like a console and maybe all those preamps are sometimes like they're kind of prohibitive to like having a really cool all day working kind of recording situation where you can maybe be more like on a living room couch, but there's great speakers, and then instead of maybe a really nice compressor, there's tons of inspiring synths, and then keyboards, and then guitars or basses, things that would make people sort of change up their creative synapses and do something different, because there is so much of that already in existence. So the idea is that we can have kind of multiple setups across the areas of this house where artists and their teams and producers can come work. They can stay if they'd like to as well, and have that opportunity to quietly go about the creative process in whatever way they'd like to.
Man, that's so cool. So if someone right now wanted to spend a day there, what's that process look like? Is it open for business currently?
Yeah, we've just been kind of getting that off the ground. But if you wanted to do that, you can reach out to me. I'm Tommy at carriagehouse.nyc. And send me an email. We'll also probably put in the bottom of this maybe some links and stuff.
For sure.
But there's basically a bunch of different options because the space is modular is like the best word for it, is that it accommodates a lot of different things. So when I'm talking to a client, we can kind of suss out, hey, is this, just a few people who want to basically have some speakers and an interface and a mic and just do some editing and some vocal tracking, or is this like, let's pull out all the fun toys and have, basically a whole layout of synths and tape machines and guitars and things like that. So it can kind of span a bunch of different possibilities, and we have different spaces that can suit different setups. So, if you didn't want to use the upstairs, where I am right now is more like the control room space, and that's another thing that you could also tap into even for like a half a day or something like that.
Right.
So,
dude,
yeah,
it's so cool. And I guess for context for the people out there, like I live in Jersey, you're in the city, as you just mentioned. So we're definitely going to be meeting in person, and I'll have a chance to like check out. And maybe one of the, like I was mentioning, like I don't do this type of thing that often, right? Be immersed and be in person with other musical people and stuff. So like any opportunity that I do have to do that is something that I'm prioritizing this year and even moving forward, right? Just because I think it's time. We're a few years post COVID, and there's just something special about being in person and stuff. And so I definitely look forward to that. I'm going to ask you a question that I'm going to also answer. Just came to me just now. But we're both massive fans of Teenage Engineering. Yeah. And it's going to be a difficult question, perhaps. But if you had to choose one Teenage Engineering product and you had to get rid of all the rest, which one are you choosing?
Well, I always want more, for sure. I definitely have a good collection. Let me see if I can even, if I change the settings here, can I show my other camera? Because I have one pointed. Yeah, I can. Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, try it. Yeah, let's see. That might be a first. But, yeah, let me know if it should let you, maybe, right? In, like, the camera section on the bottom.
Yeah, it's not letting me pull that drop down right now. But
okay.
I do have the good thing is that I can just do this. I got my OP-1 Field here, and I'm actually running everything through the TX-6 at the moment, which is
nice. Cool. What an amazing piece of hardware that is, huh?
It really is. I haven't messed around with the new sampler component of the TX-6, but
Same.
I can't believe that it's like just a portable interface that's that small.
That's small.
It's just extremely useful, and
yep.
I think people laugh at how obsessed I am with it, just because I always have it around. But you were talking about earlier how you used it to, and I'll answer your question in a second. But one
Sure.
thing I noticed the TX6 is particularly cool. I have an iPad with still an 1/8" like a headphone out, and to do something where sometimes when I'm working, I'll like want to maybe hear a TV show on in the background, maybe while I'm mixing or something, but
Yeah.
kind of have it like ambient. The fact that I can put a filter on it like this, you know, or delay, right, like
Yeah.
that, is crazy, and I
Yeah.
can sort of reinvent my listening environment as I'm
Yeah.
doing stuff is very cool. So
That's
for
really-
that, it's like a really fun kind of commercial thing. But the OP-1 Field, I think, is where I'd have to go.
Yeah.
Just because it sort of does everything. It's a little bit of an interface. It's a sampler. It's a drum machine. It's a DAW.
Yeah.
It's a synthesizer. So I think I'd have to go with that one, just because I feel like I can use it so well now. Like, it's something that if I bring a backpack somewhere, I'm like, why would I not bring it? You know,
Have it
if
with
I have
you.
20 minutes, I will
Yeah.
make something on there. You know.
Well, let's stay right there, and then I'll answer my question. I'll answer the same question. And before I ask the follow-up question, I'm currently using the TX6 and the OP-1 Field in a different way than maybe they're expected to be used because they're so portable. But I'm using them actually in my. Let me tilt this over so I can see what I'm showing.
Oh,
but
nice.
I have my Nord piano over here, and so I have this thing routed. Dang, is it like? Oh yeah, you can kind of see it maybe. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I have my OP-1 Field there, and then I have my TX6 over here, right next to it, actually hanging on the music rest. And I have everything routed so that what's going out during my live streams is coming from the OP-1 Field via USB. And
Oh,
my
wow.
microphone and like everything else is going into the mixer, and then that's going into the OP-1 Field. And what's incredible about that is that I can be doing whatever it is that I'm doing musically with my voice, add effects to it on the piano, etc. And then I'm able to just record that to tape, like say like if I'm doing something, I could just like instantly record it to tape, and then like shock people who are watching, like they have no idea it's being recorded, and I just like rewind it, and then like what the heck, like it's unbelievable. So I'm obsessed with that setup. So I'm not really like bringing my TX6 with me out like when I go to cafes and stuff currently. I could see an absolute not need but want for a second TX6 for that very reason, because like, you know, having like, especially sometimes I've had like several things in there, right? I've had the KO2, which I'm still kind of exploring. I've had my iPad, I had my OPZ, I had all these things kind of in there. And for me, that I want to get into a cadence with the live streaming. I didn't really obviously feel like it's a fun thing to like have to be unplugging and plugging too much. So I'm kind of like letting that be. Right off camera over here, as I'm giving you like a full tour, is I have the TP7 right over here. Is that what it's called? Yeah, TP7. Just came in yesterday. Okay, I was like,
oh my gosh.
I'm gonna give you a little. I'll give you a little story, man. So I had a chance to meet with folks, from Teenage Engineering. Let's say about I don't know, 6 to 8 months or so before the TP7 was even announced in the city, in New York City. And it was one of those moments where just like, I was just, you know, just ecstatic, like being able to see it and hear about it for the first time. I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is why I got into the space kind of thing. Right. Fast forward all the way to today is like when I finally yesterday was finally able to get my hands on it. And I am, have you seen one, or do you have one of those?
I don't. I mean, it's on the chopping block, but no,
eventually.
I don't have one.
Yeah.
I'd like
Okay.
to get one, yeah.
I'm still figuring it out, still using it and stuff. But my thoughts, and I don't know if anyone listening to this maybe drop some comments or something below. But right now, being able to do what you just described with the TX6 and plug it into the iPad or use it as an interface, this I believe from all the information, like it can be used as an audio interface as well. But for whatever reason, when I plug the USB-C into my iPad the same exact way that I would with the TX6, and then just plug headphones in to try to listen to what's going on the iPad, I don't hear anything. So it's very, very, I was going to say disturbing. That's like a strong word. It's not disturbing, but it is one of the most important things that I wanted to be able to do with this, because I thought like, now I don't need a TX6 out and about. I can have this to carry around. So the jury's still out on what's happening with that. I've spoken to a few people. about being able to do that. And said, of course it can do that. People who own it. So maybe there's a settings thing I just have to kind of play around with. But my answer to that question has to be the drum roll, has to be the OPZ. The OPZ
Yeah.
for me is the most magical, fun, I just love it so much. The stuff that I created on there, I'm like, how did I make that? Like, it sounds crazy. It sounds so good. I just love it. I love performing with it. I love standing at a, not specifically at a train station, but I've done this a few times where I have it with me and I just have headphones on and I'm just like jamming out and I'm like remixing my music the way that you described, like reinventing how you're kind of experiencing music. I'm a huge fan of it, and it's just a really really fun device.
It's a slept on one. I sold mine, and I've had this thought recently. I miss it. Like, I sold it to buy some modular synth at some point.
Yeah.
But I had the same sort of interactions with it. Like, I got it. It was sort of my introduction to TE was the KO 33. Like,
Nice.
kind of beginning of 2020, I believe. Maybe
Yeah.
End of 2019. And then as the pandemic set more in, and just kind of continued to dial into like gear and stuff.
Right.
I got the OPZ and had the most magical like solo walks where I would put on my headphones and just completely dissociate for like an hour.
Wow.
As like I would walk around my neighborhood with this thing and just like, play and like sequence, because I think, as you said, it has sequencers in it that are actually a lot like better in some ways than the OP-1 Field, at least for people who are not as precise performers. So there's an ability to quantize, and like there's just it's really easy to get fast results on there, and then to delete it and change it.
Yep.
So that is much more of a digital kind of DAW based sequence, undo, manipulate kind of a thing. Like, oh, let's have a 16-step one. Oh no, I'm gonna make it 64.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you like have this really kind of complex and moving song. And so I agree, some of the things I made on it were like, how on earth did I make this on a remote?
Right.
And I miss having the game, the kind of, I think the way they gamified that thing was so cool. It took us some time to learn it.
Yeah.
But it was fun, and as you said, the payout was huge. Like I really enjoyed every time I played with it. I think it's a very slept on device from them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It was actually, I think, one of the first pieces of like mobile hardware. I think the first piece of mobile hardware in the music space that I purchased right when it came out. And because I only had that, and it's kind of a good reminder, I think, for me as well, because I only had that, and I guess my iPad at the time, I didn't have other things to distract me. I watched Cuckoo's full video. I remember exactly where I was. I was like on a Stairmaster in the gym set machine, and I was like, I'm gonna watch this whole hour and 20-minute thing. As a matter of fact, I probably watched it when I ordered it just to kind of prepare myself. So when I got it finally, I was like, okay, I kind of know my way around it a little bit, and just it's just a ton of fun. And even the form factor, the size of it compared to the OP-1 Field, like the way that you were just describing. You probably, I don't know if you have or not, making a bit of an assumption, but you probably wouldn't like be doing the same thing, like walking around your neighborhood with the OP-1 Field in your hand. That's more of on a desk or on a cafe table or whatever. So they're both very different. But I want to talk to you a little bit about your experience with the OP-1 Field, especially with it being, and I was hoping that you would say that is your, the Swiss Army knife. That's your one that you would need to keep if you had to get rid of the others. I've had mine now for, I don't know, 2 years or something, or a year and a half, whatever, however long. Yeah. And I wanted it to be something that it is not for me. It has not been this for me yet, it sounds like it is for you. And I know that it is for several other people, but it's this super capable device that can do so many different things. And I wanted that to be something that I can just take with me, go to a cafe, and okay, today's not a laptop day or today's not an iPad day. Today I'm just gonna create something just on the OP-1 Field. And I don't know if it's because, I play the piano, so I have, I don't need quantization and things like that, right? But I'm kind of used to it for producing. But something about it where I'm just not able to make something. It sounds like it's like, just get better at it, I'm not able to make something from scratch on just that device. I have fun when I connect it to my piano, like I showed you, or when I don't know, record songs into it to tape and then manipulate it further. But just standalone, being like, all right, I'm going to create a 4-bar loop just on here. Nothing sounded ever like even quality or not quality, but just sounded interesting or fun. But how do
Yeah.
you use yours? Like if you were taking yours out right now and you're gonna make something from scratch, like walk us through that a little bit.
Totally. And I think it's good to reference what you said earlier, which is that, like, these are all just different ways that creators do things. And this is just sort of how I've approached it. Not that it's correct or anything like that. But I think the OP-1 Field really leans to performers. So I think if, like, for you, for example, you said, like, you're a keys player. So you know your chords, your arpeggios, and scales and stuff like that. So I think it's a huge asset with this. I almost would tell people, if you're like a producer who's really not someone who plays actual keys or maybe doesn't play guitar as much, but really is focused on like samples and working in a DAW and digitally, the OP-1 Field will be not as accessible right away. It's just a little bit more challenging because the things that you would typically do if you worked that way would be to use sequencers and other systems to kind of help lay things out. And the sequencers on here, again, are pretty finicky, right? So you kind of have to understand them. Where I think it shines is like as a prime melodic, like a melodic sampler starter. Like it's a tape where I will create a sample for something later to build a song around. And I've actually just kind of seen for the first time in my career more that what I've been naturally doing with the device for years, because I had the original OP-1 for a while. I actually had like 2 of them because I bought, sold, and bought, kind of went back and forth on it. But I was always creating these loops, and I was like, somebody could use this, like, but I never really like knew where or what. But now what I've been able to do is use it as like the basis of a song starter, because often where I fit well into like writing and production rooms in New York is like creating and playing a lot of parts that then someone's like, yo, this is great, let's put some heavy drums on this and turn this into like a polished sort of track. And so having that tape and then particularly though, this is the most important thing, is like the samples that I have on it, because I don't really think the synth engines on there, and again, I love T and this is nothing to them, but they're still based off of sort of old original like 2010 2011 kind of digital synth platforms that they're creating, and a lot of them still don't even have answers as to what the physical knobs do. Like you're like, I don't know, for this FM synth, what am I changing? Is this like the carrier wave or what? And maybe someone's demystified that more, but I think I've done a lot of research and can never fully answer that. And so for me, with synthesis, like I want to know what I'm doing. Like you can use synths as preset machines, or I want to know what it is so I can make the sound. And with the OP-1 Field, you kind of can't with those, other than like the new one that's out there. But what I think it's the best at is its melodic sampler. Like I think that the way it pitches things up and down to create polyphonic, melodic instruments. The first time I found like a weird overtone on a guitar and sampled that in there and then turned it into a pad and reversed it, I was like, holy crap, like what have I just unlocked? Like this is some kind of wizardry or something like that is how it felt in the moment. But so to me, it's like I to get inspired with it, you have to just like give it good samples to play back. So once I got that dialed in, that's where I was like, this is where this thing shines, is you have to have a great set of like starting samples to play chords and stuff too. And then if you have that, I think you can make a lot of motion. Like for instance, a lot of people might have a normal kind of pad. I might play something here where it's here, right? Like that actually has an octave.
By the way, I can't even hear that. So, and I wanted to actually ask you about this too.
Oh yeah.
This is actually super interesting. You have your TX6. Even when I think earlier you added some effects to your voice, and you heard the difference effects,
yeah.
and I didn't hear them.
Okay.
But
I might not have come through on that. Interesting.
I think I might. I'm curious as to why. But like your headphones right now, those are connected to like the main out on the TX6.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So then yeah, you would think
listed.
that your USB, your USB is what's connected to this whole setup. Okay, yeah. So the USB is supposed to mirror everything coming from the main out for sure. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's
okay.
strange.
Yeah, that is
it's
strange.
listed as the interface for the mic and the speaker, but anyway, like just more conceptually, right? If you were, for instance, a sample instead of just like a one shot, like a simple straight tone, if you had something that hit dun dun like an octave, one after the other, think about how the OP-1 pitches and slows things down. The root might look like this in length, but as you slow it down, it's going to widen and get longer.
Yeah.
As you speed it up, it's going to get shorter.
Right.
And what that means is you have this interesting sort of slope of lengths, wherein if you hold down chords, you're going to have very interesting kind of modulation and overlapping repeats. And this was stuff that I think kind of Bon Iver tapped in with the original one when he was
Wow.
using on his records. You can kind of hear that. Just basically the loop points that are on there, arbitrary or not, create rhythm or motion
Yeah.
in some way. And you can do this in any kind of sampler, but for whatever reason, it's just really kind of intuitive and straightforward on here. And so even like an incorrect or maybe like not a traditional type of sample, like the sort of melodic motion of it, can really result in some crazy pads and stuff. Is what I found.
Well, so this is why I love these conversations. I that's something I rarely, if ever, sample on the OP-1 Field. I'm like, dang, I can't really. Let's see. I mean, I don't know. It's like hard to chop samples. So I'm like, okay, this is not as fun or inspiring than as Koala Sampler. And there was a couple of like little finicky things, but you're talking about melodic sampling, which is very different than what I've tried a little bit in the past. And I love the way you even describe the timing, right? As the pitch goes up or down, like it's going to create something super unique. And what's cool about this platform that I have here, and I want to lean into it a little bit more, is there's been several conversations like this that I've had where people talk about in earnest and super enthusiastically about an element of, in this case, the OP-1 Field. In many cases, it's been the OP-1 Field. Things that are just like, that are so special about that piece of hardware to them that I wasn't aware of as someone who, who's using it in my own unique ways and finding absolutely finding value in it, but have been wanting to use it as a standalone thing. And I think the way, like, now I'm excited tomorrow or the next day, whenever I have some free time, like I actually will take that, unplug it from the setup here and like explore a little bit and make it a point to go to a cafe and like say, you know what, I'm going to spend a little time learning this and kind of seeing if I could spark some creativity based on, kind of what you just shared.
And I would say too, like you've got the perfect sample like fodder right there if you're Nord. Like just go through there and find some of those crazy pads and like they have some wild samples on that.
Yeah,
But
you're
any
right.
one of those, like just grabbing one shots of those, you're gonna come up with something wild. I think.
That's really
And
awesome.
then I think you were the one pointing this out in a video a couple weeks ago about like the shift lift thing that they dropped.
Yeah.
With the update. So then, if you were to, I'll do this sometimes too, like with Mellotron sounds, like to get a different type of tone, will be like record 4 different notes on track 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the tape.
Yeah.
And then you can shift lift that into the sampler and then smash it together, or resample those played back together.
Right.
Or half speed it and then resample that in.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff then gives you like just something different. And I think if the OP-1 Field is sort of a preset machine, but if you can build yourself unique ones,
Yeah.
that's awesome,
And the point you made too about the sounds that come on their stock, that kind of is, again, that's my bread and butter, like finding presets. Like I'm less into the creating my own sounds. I'm more into exploring presets and kind of being, oh, that sounds dope, let me go ahead and play some chords with this or play whatever. That's like kind of what's musically inspiring to me. So it kind of makes sense that it's okay for me to say, oh, maybe the sounds that are in there already are part of the reason why I wasn't able to have as much fun creating something from scratch. And that's very similar to Ableton. Like I've used it and I'm like, okay, I understand how to use it now. I understand how to like kind of use session view and get musical ideas started. But like, I don't know, on average, when I'm going through the browser of the different sounds that come, and I have, Ableton Suite, so I have like a ton of packs, ton of things that are stock there that there's like a lot of sounds, but maybe on average, maybe 10% of the time as I'm sifting through sounds, I might find something that I think is like, oh, this is dope, this is cool, I want to create something with this. And so I kind of realized that over time, like, okay, there's a whole, like you mentioned earlier, there's a whole world of, VSTs. So I like started exploring the omnispheres of the world and stuff. And I have that, I'm checking that out a little bit, even though, like I mentioned, I stepped back away from using Ableton, but that did inject a ton of creativity. I'm like, oh, all these sounds are like fun and creative and inspiring. So it's like it's a give or take kind of thing, but I I think the other example I was going to say too with the OP-1 Field, someone talked to me who like knows a lot about like the mixing and mastering process, which is again that's
Yeah.
another space that I don't have as much experience in and stuff.
Hmm.
But she was telling me that the output page, the mixer, and then the output where you could turn up the drive and I think the release and all that stuff. She was basically saying like almost all of her songs that she works on and ones that she works on for other artists, like she always brings those songs once they're done wherever they're originally made in, she brings them into the OP-1 Field because like that last step is able to do something musically, sonically that like no other DAW, no other gear can do. And that was like super dope to hear. I was like, damn, I didn't know that was a thing. And it's just like a lot of like little things like that someone could hear the right thing and then, it could spark some creativity in their mind.
Yeah, completely. Like that, the way I got into the original OP1 was like, you can actually go check this song out too. It's by Charlie Brennan. But we had worked on a song. Oh my God, it's blanking on it right now. It's a beach song. It'll come to me in a second. But we'd worked on a song during the pandemic when I'd first kind of gotten it,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a lot of different pedals, and even at that time, it got I still have it a tape delay, a Space Echo from the '70s that was
Nice.
gifted by a friend of mine, which was a really cool thing to have. And I what I started to do was record different stems to the OP-1 Field, almost like you were talking about with like how you're doing with your interview, where I'd grab vocal lines and things like that,
Mm.
and then just use it as the bridge from the computer to like the DAWless world, and then
Right.
go resample it through the tape machine or put it onto cassette or then put it through these pedals, and then recapture it back into itself, and then kind of use that as a way to sort of step out of the computer for a minute, and it really brought out a lot of really cool ideas.
Yeah.
As a result of it. It was a process that I enjoy and I still do. Like I was going back through one of my tapes earlier today, and I found again some vocals and things like that where, let's say like I needed like an interesting intro for a song that's almost done, right? I could take the artist vocal and I might solo it on the computer and just quickly record it, either line into the computer or drop the file on there, whatever.
Right.
Easy. Sometimes even sample with the mic, just because why not? Like why not grab it and have like the space or kind of the lo-fi sound of that,
Mm-hmm.
and then do something like pitch it up an octave and then reverse it, and then then pitch another one down an octave and reverse that, and
Oh
then
wow.
maybe in the DAW take those recordings and just play with the stereo field and the motion, and then put them through delays and reverb and a filter, and then minus 30 dB, and all of a sudden it's this crazy kind of pad, but
Yeah.
the source was the artist and it was like the song itself, and all those things are doable on the computer too, for sure. That's definitely not something I'm saying, but the way that they're presented on there is really fun,
Right.
or even the endless sequencer is so fun to create crazy arps and stuff like as textures. Like that's something that I'll do a lot, is just layer different subdivisions with the endless sequencer. So I'll be like, all right, I'm in the key of C minor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have one sequence that'll go like 1 flat 3 5 flat 7 or whatever, just going up the notes. But then the next one might be an inversion of that, so it's 1 5 flat 3 flat 7
Mm-hmm.
9 1 or something. But then that one might go, instead of quarter notes, that might be at eighth notes.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one could be descending against that, and then that could be at sixteenths, and then you do another one that kind of inverts that order, and then all of a sudden, as you print 4 to 6 of those like in Logic and then pan them out in different ways, you have this crazy spread of awesome kind of arps and stuff that I wouldn't have probably made had I just sequenced them in MIDI.
Right. Right.
But because I encountered that with the original OP-1 a while ago, that's another thing that I use it for all the time, is just creating these really complex rhythmic motion kind of based arps and sequences.
Dang, that's really cool. That reminds me a little bit of not gonna remember the name because it's been so long since I've used it. But there was a app on the iPad when I first started using it that was similar to the way you just described it, where I'm gonna kind of butcher it, but you essentially, dang, I need to check that out. Yeah, you essentially have like 4 lanes, and you could change the time, and you could just do some things that sounded very similar to the way you just described. And it was actually a lot of fun, just to kind of mess around and get like some really fun musical textures and stuff like that kind of created. All right, we have time for a couple last questions, rapid fire. Okay, rapid fire
Yeah,
questions.
sure.
So, first question: name a place that you've visited that you loved.
Mm. I really love Spain.
Oh, nice.
Valencia specifically, yeah.
How long ago?
That's a great. In 2017 and 2018, I actually got to do. I got to go to school there for a bit, and so that's where I really got to spend like a lot of time and
Sweet.
dial into that town a bit. But I loved it and had so much fun. I miss it,
Yeah.
and feel like I didn't get to spend as much time in the city as I would have liked to had I not been studying. But
You got to go
yeah,
back.
that was a really cool place. Yeah, definitely. How about you?
Greece. Greece.
Ooh,
I loved
whereabouts?
loved that whole experience, and we went there about 2018, I think, my wife and I,
Nice.
and just the best thing ever. Definitely want to go back. Went to Santorini and Athens, and just like
Oh
small
my gosh.
villages, and like felt like I was in another world. It was so cool.
Probably the best food of your life too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, so if you had a chance to have, let's say lunch with anyone spanning the history of time, who would you like to sit down with?
Oh man, that's a tough one. It'd probably change like every couple weeks,
Right.
depending on what I was into at the moment. Right now, who would I be very into? Um, just trying to think of a good answer here. This is one that I feel like is long term. I've always thought Todd Rundgren is so cool. He's that artist and record producer from the '60s, '70s. I mean, he's
N-
still going now,
Nah.
but he had that
Who
I
is it?
Saw the Light record and
Oh,
Something Anything was
okay.
his big hit in the '70s. But he started off as an engineer, more producer for other bands like the band actually, and even
Yeah.
a few others, and then did his own thing and just crushed it and
Wow.
continues to be himself through every iteration of every project he ever did and never changed. So I don't know, like he's someone I'm like I wish I could be Todd Rundgren. That guy's the coolest guy ever. And
Yeah,
I'd love
yeah.
to figure
Like
out.
inspired by him.
Yeah, definitely. And his musical output is crazy, really
I'll
crazy
have
stuff.
to hit you up offline so I can get the name and look him up, like hear some of his stuff for sure. Because
Yeah,
first time I think I've heard, I, yeah, I think it's the first time I've heard his name.
you'll probably recognize some tracks. But
Songs, I'm sure, right? Yeah. All right, last question is actually it's a two-part question. First is name a show that you love, and then name a movie that you love.
okay. Um, I'll give two answers to that. So I think for the show, like I like TV more than film in a lot of ways, just because I think I like the short form content side of it, and just
Yeah.
that it can kind of like roll on. I also think that I like to break up the monotony of a lot of like the music and creative work where I'm sure you get this too, where there's editing and things like that with a show on the background. So for something funny,
Mm,
I love like The Office or something like that because it's just I put on like
favorite
the
show of all
Peacock
time.
Superfan episodes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's hilarious and it can just kind of dispel any bad or negative energy
Yeah.
no matter what.
That's a great way to put it. It sure can. Yep.
As a serious show, one that I think I'm just going to say a deep cut. I think everyone sleeps on this HBO show called The Leftovers, which is
Oh,
so good.
that was
It's like
great.
you watch that show?
I watched. It was so weird, but it was so cool in hindsight. Like when we were watching, I was like,
Yeah.
"This is." I was like, "What's happening?" I was like confused at certain points, but in hindsight, I'm like, did we actually watch a show called The Leftovers that was about this, or was it all like a mirage? Was it all like a dream or
Yeah.
something? It was so wild. Remember, like the third season. I think the third season, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
opened up with like a Ooh, I got a Charlie horse. That's the first time it happened during a live thing. I'm gonna keep this in the episode. But didn't it like open up with like just different characters, and we didn't even see the main person there for like the whole episode because like it was Regina King and the family like in Texas or something like that, and then out of nowhere like that it was a great show. It was so crazy, very trippy.
It's like the third testament of the Bible. That's like that's what I realized kind of at the end of it. I was like, it's a fictional third testament
Wow,
of the Bible. It's like what happens if there's a next like prophet figure
interesting.
in like roughly. So to me, I just think it was a really well done show, and everyone kind of slept on it, especially because it came out right before kind of COVID. But like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's a really good show if you're looking for something
that was
heavier.
a fantastic. When you said The Office, and I'm like, yeah, that's also my favorite show. And then when you preface the next part by like slept on show, and then you said HBO, I was like, oh my god, don't tell me he's about to say the show that I'm thinking, which is not The Leftovers, even though I clearly did love it. White Lotus. Have you seen that one?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was
The
some
season
wild
one or
stuff.
two?
Uh,
Did you watch both?
I did. I loved both seasons. I guess I think I like the second season a little bit more, but I loved both seasons a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. I think the first season too, you're kind of like getting brought into like
This
just how
world.
insane
Yeah.
that world. Yeah,
Yeah.
that I think I left the first season be like, this was great, but wow, it was dark or like whatever a little bit. And then by the second one, you're like, I'm kind of ready for it, you know.
Yeah.
And then you could just appreciate how funny it was and how
Yeah.
creative the writing and also the fact that it's Ned Schneebly, you know what I mean, from School of Rock, like the guy who made it, Mike Mike
M-
White,
Mike White or something, I think.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah. I mean, the fact that he was the substitute teacher that Jack Black replaced in School of Rock is just so awesome because for every young music person, that show was like, I don't know, it's just cool. I just think that's awesome that he
That's
had
fascinating. I did not
such
know that
a
about
killer.
him. I know that he's
Yeah,
worked on in the industry and on different shows for a long number of years, and I
very.
was kind of fascinated with like this was his, like big break, so to speak. And it was just kind of cool to see like, wow, this person has this level of immense talent to be able to create this what I call masterpiece of a show. I wasn't really able to think of any other show where like the actors, the writing, the music,
Mm-hmm.
and the cinematography, as well as the length. Like it's only air quotes whatever 10 episodes. So it's like it's not you don't have to watch 20 seasons or 10 seasons in order to get what you know what I'm saying. Like it was. I can't
Yeah,
think of any other show that had all that checked all the boxes for me personally. I was obsessed with it, and I cannot wait to see what happens in Thailand. And they're bringing back the masseuse from the first season. She is going to be
oh,
in the third season.
okay,
I
yeah,
forget her name, but yeah, she was also in the show called Insecure that I watched. She was very funny in that show. Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna hit you offline. Cannot wait to set something up in the next couple of weeks to kind of make it out there and just bring some gear. I'll let you check out. Have you checked out the TP7 yet or not yet? Like seen it in person?
yeah.
Oh, you have.
Not in person, no.
Oh, not yet.
I mean,
Okay.
just online.
So
Yeah, yeah. So I'd
I'll
love to.
definitely bring that. Mine's well, I'm like, sitting here, letting
You know,
it
I gotta get off the call. We gotta play it this thing.
right, letting it like record this whole thing, just to kind of do some testing and stuff like that with it. But definitely appreciate the time and really enjoyed the conversation, and look forward
Appreciate
to.
you, man. And like, just a quick thing because everyone watching, you're like, you've done a lot for this kind of community who love this sort of stuff. And I think, like I said to you yesterday, like I've known about your channel for a long time because
Yeah.
I've been into this stuff. And when it was first coming out, there was a deficit of people talking about it and going through it. And so, you've just done an awesome job of shining the light on lots of other people and bringing about more interest in this community. So I appreciate you having me on. This is cool that this happened. It was fun that I reached out about a sample pack I made, and here we are talking.
There we
So
go, and less than a week, and I appreciate those kind words, man. I think it's always important to yeah, when you have things like that in your heart, like you did yesterday and like you did now, to kind of share them, with people, let people know and stuff. I think in this world of just people are just in their own lanes doing their own thing. So many distractions. It's like cool to have this type of connection. So definitely appreciate that.
hell yeah, awesome.
All right, man. Have a great one, and I'll see you soon.
You too.